The voice wasn't loud. It was louder than loud, the kind that doesn't just shout, it lands. Officer Travis Colburn didn't walk. He stormed. Out of his cruiser, across the gravel, straight toward the driver's side window like he already knew how this was going to end. Out of the car, now. No, hello. No reason. No request. Not even a glance at her plates. Just command. Just threat. Just authority aimed like a weapon. Maya Porter kept her hands on the wheel. Eyes forward. Breathing slow. She didn't flinch. Not yet. It was a straight stretch of highway. Route 9. Quiet. The kind of road where people only get pulled over if something is really wrong. Except nothing was wrong. Maya hadn't sped. Hadn't swerved. She was wearing neutral colors. No tint on the windows. Seatbelt buckled. Air freshener tucked away. She'd done everything right. But that didn't matter. Because she wasn't pulled over for what she did. She was pulled over for who she was. She turned her head slowly. Controlled. Officer, she said, I'd like to inform you. Step out. Her badge was in the glove compartment. Her registration, too. She didn't reach for it. Not yet. Not when his hand was hovering over his gun like it had a heartbeat. I'm Special Agent Maya Porter. FBI. Off duty. I'm reaching for my ID in the glove. Hands where I can see them. Her pulse quickened, but her face stayed still. She'd been trained for moments like this. But not this. Not being treated like a suspect inside her own damn skin. She opened the door. Slow. Non-threatening. She stepped out, hands raised slightly. The officer's stance widened. You match a description, he said. She raised an eyebrow. What description is that? He didn't answer. Because there wasn't one. Because description was just another word for excuse. You live around here? He asked. I do. You own this car? I do. Let me guess, he sneered. Bought it yourself? Maya didn't respond. She didn't need to. He already had his story written. Colburn circled her like she was prey. Like he was just waiting for a twitch, a snap, a breath in the wrong key. Turn around. Hands behind your back. For what? Resisting. I haven't resisted anything. Now. She didn't move. He did. Grabbed her wrist. Yanked her backward. Slammed her chest against the hood. Metal met skin. Her shoulder burned. She bit down a wince. And then, her forehead bounced off the glass. The edge of the badge in her glove box flashed in her mind. She was federal law enforcement. And she was being treated like a criminal for existing. Another cruiser pulled up. An older cop stepped out. Saw the scene. Saw Maya pinned to her car like a trophy. Travis? He said, unsure. Colburn didn't turn. She's resisting. She said she's FBI. She's lying. But then he saw it. The photo. Clipped to the sun visor. Half visible through the windshield. Dress blues. Medals. A sharp salute. Maya. Not in civilian clothes. Not passive. A federal agent. With a Medal of Valor pinned to her chest. Travis. The older cop's voice dropped. Look at her dashboard. Colburn hesitated. Eyes narrowed. Then he stepped forward. And for the first time, he paused. Really looked. And realized he had just laid hands on someone the system wasn't supposed to touch. Officer Travis Colburn froze. The older cop's voice cut through the heat like a razor. Dashboard. Travis blinked, disoriented by the sudden shift in gravity. He followed the line of the officer's finger to the windshield. There, clipped to the sun visor, was a small photo. The kind you'd miss if you weren't looking for it. Or the kind you'd ignore if you thought you already knew who someone was. But this one shattered everything. A formal portrait. Maya Porter in her FBI dress blues. Hat tilted. Saluting. Ribbons across her chest. A gold badge glinting under her nameplate. And pinned beside it, the Medal of Valor. There were only a handful of women who had earned that medal in federal service. And he had just smashed one of them against the hood of her own car. The second officer, Sergeant Reed, by his patch, took a half step closer. You need to back off, he said. Not a question. Not a suggestion. A command. Travis opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Maya's face was still pressed against the hood. Her breath fogged the glass. Blood trickled from the corner of her mouth where her lip had split on impact. She didn't speak. Didn't scream. Didn't cry. She didn't need to, because the silence was doing all the screaming for her. Reed cleared his throat. "You heard me. Uncuff her." Travis hesitated. "She didn't identify. She said she was FBI. She didn't show ID. She told you it was in the glove box." She. Travis. It was the kind of name drop that came with weight. Final. Heavy. Reluctantly, Travis reached for the cuffs. His fingers fumbled. Maya didn't help him. Didn't make it easier. She stayed still, like a statue forged in fury. The metal clicked open. He stepped back. She turned around slowly, eyes hard, face unreadable. "Agent Porter," Reed said, softer now, "are you hurt?" She wiped the blood from her mouth. "You're about to find out." Maya didn't raise her voice. Didn't wave her badge like a sword. She reached into her car with deliberate slowness, opened the glove box, and pulled out her credentials. No shaking hands. No quiver in her voice. Just facts. She held it up to Reed first. He examined it. Nodded once. Then she turned to Travis. Held the badge an inch from his face. "Special Agent Maya Porter, Federal Bureau of Investigation. I work counterterrorism, organized crime, and civil corruption. I've done more for this country before breakfast than you've done in your career." Travis swallowed hard. She stepped closer. "I'm also the woman you racially profiled, physically assaulted, and falsely detained." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Congratulations. You just made the worst mistake of your life." Reed jumped in. "Agent Porter, I'd like to file an internal incident report immediately. And if you'd prefer to—" "I'm not going through your department," she snapped. "This doesn't stop here. Internal Affairs will get my report, and so will the Civil Rights Division at DOJ." She turned to Travis again. "You think your badge makes you powerful?" she asked. "It doesn't. It makes you visible. And now everyone is going to see exactly who you are." She walked around the car, opened the passenger side door, reached up and unhooked a second device from her sun visor, a compact dash cam. Still recording. Still blinking red. She held it up and smiled for the first time that day. "You'll be happy to know I caught every second." Reed looked like he'd seen a ghost. Travis looked like he wanted to vanish. But no one said anything, because there was nothing left to say. Before stepping back into her car, Maya turned one last time. "To be clear," she said to both men, "if I wasn't an agent, if I was just a woman in a car, you'd both be telling a very different story right now." She didn't wait for a reply. Didn't need one. She got in, shut the door, and drove away. Not fast. Just steady. Measured. Alive. Behind her, Travis finally exhaled. "You think she's gonna file?" he asked, voice thin. Reed didn't look at him. "I think she's going to bury you." Travis looked at the road. At his hands. At the shrinking silhouette of the woman he thought he could dominate. He didn't know her name when he pulled her over. But he would never forget it now. Maya didn't go home. She didn't stop for coffee. Didn't phone a friend. She didn't even wipe the blood completely from her lip. She drove straight to the federal building in downtown Washington, D.C. with her hands locked at 10 and 2, jaw tight, and eyes dead ahead. Because this wasn't going to be filed away. Not this time. She'd worn a badge long enough to know how stories got distorted. How reports were altered. How cam footage got lost, and statements got softened until they no longer resembled truth. She wasn't about to be another shadow on a spreadsheet. She was going to speak, and make damn sure people listened. The Justice Department's Office for Civil Rights didn't ask many questions when she walked in. She didn't need to flash the badge. The blood on her collar, the bruises blooming along her jawline, those said more than credentials ever could. "I want to file a formal federal complaint against Officer Travis Colburn of the Fairfax County Police Department," she said, loud enough for the entire waiting area to hear. The man behind the desk blinked, sat a little straighter. "Do you have evidence?" he asked. She reached into her bag. pulled out the dash cam. I have a digital recording of the full encounter. Unedited, time-stamped, face and audio clear. He nodded. We'll need a written statement. Maya leaned forward. You'll get it. But I want more than paperwork. I want a full investigation. I want disciplinary review. I want oversight on why this officer felt emboldened to assault a black woman on the side of the road without even checking her ID. There was a pause. Understood, he said quietly. Please come with me. Maya sat in the small, fluorescent-lit interview room for over 2 hours. She detailed every moment, each command, each time she complied, each escalation by Colburn. She included Reed's arrival, the dashboard photo, her credentials, the smile that never came. She didn't dramatize it. She didn't need to. The facts were damning enough. As she finished, the civil rights attorney assigned to her leaned back. You know what makes this different? He asked. What? You lived. Maya's eyes darkened. I wasn't supposed to need a uniform and a medal to make it home. 2 hours later, her phone lit up. A known number. She answered. Agent Porter? Yes. This is Deputy Chief Rowland of the Fairfax County Police. I just received notification of your filing. I'd like to apologize on behalf of the department. We'd like to handle this quickly and respectfully. Don't call me to contain the fallout, she cut in. I don't want your apology. I want accountability. Silence. We're conducting an internal review. But because I'm conducting an external one. But civil rights. The press. Pick your battlefield. He tried again, softer this time. Surely we can find a way to resolve this without. She hung up. She didn't want resolution. She wanted reckoning. The next morning, 7 a.m., someone knocked on Maya's apartment door. She opened it, half expecting the worst. It was Reed, hat in hand, eyes down, not in uniform. I didn't know where else to come, he said. Maya didn't let him in. He stayed on the threshold. I should have stopped him sooner. You should have stopped him the moment you stepped out of the car. He nodded. I know. Maya studied him. Why are you here? To testify. I already submitted my statement. Everything I saw. Everything he said. You won't have to fight this alone. A long pause passed between them. Then she closed the door. Didn't say thank you. Didn't say goodbye. Because some things weren't about comfort. They were about correction. By the end of the week, the story hit the press. FBI agent detained, assaulted by local police officer. The footage went viral. The audio. The photo. The dash cam. The arrest that never should have been. People saw her eyes. Heard her restraint. Watched the shift in Colburn's body when the truth hit him like a bullet. And beneath every headline, if she hadn't been FBI, would she have survived? Maya didn't answer the question. She just kept showing up. To hearings. To interviews. To meetings with other women who hadn't been so lucky. By the time the story hit its third news cycle, the pressure cooker inside the Fairfax County Police Department had begun to scream. It wasn't just the footage anymore. It was the silence that followed. The lack of immediate suspension. The absence of any official acknowledgement from leadership. It was Colburn's name trending under hashtags like #BadgeWithoutHonor and #AgentPorterDeservesBetter. The public wanted answers. The department wanted distance. And Maya? She wanted truth to do more than trend. She wanted it to burn through concrete. Inside the department's headquarters, Chief Holloway slammed a folder onto the table. I want to know how the hell this wasn't prevented, he growled. 3 lieutenants sat across from him, each suddenly very interested in the grain of the conference table. Colburn should have never been on patrol alone, one said finally. His record was clean, said another. Holloway scoffed. You call 3 excessive force complaints in 5 years clean? 2 of them buried in arbitration, 1 inconclusive because of a missing body cam file? That's not clean. That's camouflaged. Someone shifted in their seat. The union. Screw the union, Holloway snapped. This is national. DOJ's involved. We don't get to hide behind process anymore. We own this. Every damn inch. There was silence. Then Holloway dropped the real bomb. Agent Porter has filed an official civil rights complaint. They're building a federal case. Murmurs. Curses. We need to get ahead of this, someone muttered. Holloway nodded slowly. Which means someone needs to fall. And every man in the room knew exactly who he meant. Maya sat across from a senior DOJ attorney, a woman named Teresa Van. Older. Sharp eyes. A voice like tempered steel. You want to press civil charges, Teresa said. You want internal disciplinary action. And you want Colburn off the force permanently. Correct, Maya said. Teresa nodded. But, because I want more. Maya blinked. More? Teresa leaned forward. I want an overhaul of every traffic stop policy in Fairfax. I want a full audit of 5 years of stop and search data. I want the names of every officer with a pattern like Colburn's. I want a blueprint for reform, and I want your story to break the seal. For the first time in days, Maya felt the sting of real possibility. Not justice for her alone. Justice that rippled. She nodded. Slowly. Fiercely. Let's crack it wide open. Back in his apartment, Travis Colburn watched himself on TV. Over and over. Freeze frame. Rewind. Replay. His voice shouting. Her silence. The moment the dash cam caught his hand on her wrist, the slam into the hood. The photo. The flash of recognition. The look in his eyes when it all unraveled. The phone hadn't stopped ringing. Reporters. Union reps. A voicemail from Internal Affairs. Another from his wife. He hadn't listened to that one yet. He sat there in the dark, watching the evidence of his downfall play in a loop, and whispered to no one. She never even raised her voice. 1 week later, Maya stood behind a podium in a packed auditorium. Not as a victim, as a witness. The community had gathered for a town hall on policing and civil rights. For once, people were listening. Cameras rolled. Reporters scribbled. She took a breath. If I hadn't been an FBI agent, we wouldn't be having this conversation. That officer would have gone home. I might not have. Gus. Murmurs. She pressed on. The badge didn't protect me. It only revealed what was waiting under the surface. A culture that assumes guilt before name. That escalates before it understands. That punishes the perceived threat of our skin before it ever recognizes our humanity. Thunderous applause. But Maya didn't smile. Because she knew applause wasn't change. But it was a start. 2 days later, the department released a statement. Officer Travis Colburn has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. 2 more excessive force complaints were reopened. Civil suits were filed. The union backed off. The DOJ announced the launch of a broader probe. The crack had widened. And Maya stood at the center, not as a symbol, but as a catalyst. The footage was clean. It showed everything, almost. You could see Officer Colburn's approach, his hand on the holster, the shout, the yank, the slam. You could hear Maya's calm voice, her controlled breathing, her legal declarations. You could hear her identify herself. Clearly, twice. You could see his reaction to the photo. You could see the shift in his posture the moment he realized who she was. But what the camera didn't catch, what it could never capture, was what had already lived in him long before the stop. The impulse, the prejudice, the entitlement, and it couldn't capture what lived in Maya either. The years of practice keeping her tone even, the hours of preparation that went into surviving traffic stops before they ever happened. The armor she wore that had nothing to do with badges or medals. That was the story, the part between the frames, the part everyone missed. Maya appeared on 3 networks in 1 week. Not because she wanted to, but because if she didn't speak, someone else would. They'd frame it as a misunderstanding, a mistake. They'd flatten it, and she wouldn't let that happen. On the first segment, the anchor leaned in and asked, "Agent Porter, do you think race played a role in how you were treated?" Maya didn't blink. "I don't think. I know." The second interview went deeper. "Do you think Officer Colburn would have escalated if you were a white woman in a Lexus?" "I think he saw a threat where there was none," she replied. "And I think he's been trained, whether officially or culturally, to see black women as confrontational by default. That's not policy. That's programming." The third interview wasn't live. It was with a journalist from a long-form podcast. "What were you thinking in that moment, when he slammed you against the hood?" the voice asked softly. Maya paused. "I was thinking about Sandra Bland," she said. "And I was thinking, don't die polite." While the public spotlight burned, an internal memo circulated quietly through Fairfax PD. It wasn't an apology. It was a warning. Effective immediately, all officers are required to attend de-escalation and racial bias training. All body cams must be active from approach to conclusion. No exceptions. Whispers followed. Some officers grumbled. Others stayed silent. But a few, the ones who'd always known something was broken, began to speak up. One emailed Maya anonymously. "Thank you. We weren't brave enough. You forced the doors open." She read the email 3 times. Didn't reply. Just kept it as proof. It was Maya's 3rd week back at the bureau. A junior agent stopped her in the hallway. But nervous. "Agent Porter?" "Yeah." He lowered his voice. "I just wanted to say, you being public with this? That mattered. A lot of us, we have stories we never filed. Never said out loud." Maya tilted her head. "Why not?" He hesitated. "Because we knew no one would believe us. Or worse, they'd say we were making it harder for the rest of us." Maya nodded slowly. "That's the lie that keeps the system clean on the outside and rotting underneath." He nodded, eyes wide. "Don't stop," he whispered, then walked away. The internal investigation moved fast. The hearing was closed to the public, but Maya was invited. She arrived in full dress. Same uniform as the photo. When Colburn walked in, he flinched. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The footage spoke for her. So did the bruises. So did her file. The panel deliberated for just 2 hours. Verdict: termination. The room stayed silent as the announcement was read. Maya stood. Turned. No fist pump. No victory speech. Just a quiet, steady walk out the door. She knew better than to call this justice. This was accountability. Justice would be not needing the footage. Justice would be not needing the badge. Justice would be never being pulled over in the first place. And until that was true, she wasn't done. The irony clung to her like humidity. Maya Porter had worn a uniform for over a decade. And in the moment that should have protected her, it hadn't been on her body. It had been in a photo, flat, silent, almost forgotten. If that image hadn't been visible, if that badge hadn't gleamed just right through the windshield, she knew the answer. She might be a hashtag, a case file, a headline, and that thought haunted her more than any bruise ever could. The uniform had once been her shield, not just against suspects, not just in hostile interrogations, but against the unspoken suspicion she felt as a black woman in high-clearance spaces. It was her way of saying, "I earned this. I belong here." But the day she was dragged from her own car, it didn't matter. Because she wasn't wearing it. Because Colburn didn't see the uniform in her posture, her language, her control. He saw skin, not service, not status. And that meant something chilling. Even a decorated FBI agent could be reduced to a stereotype the second she stepped out of costume. That truth? It kept her up at night. She started asking other agents of color, quietly, off the record, if they'd ever been profiled while off duty. Every single one said yes. One black male agent told her he carried his credentials in a see-through pouch around his neck when off duty. "It's not dignity," he said, "it's insurance." Another Latina field tech said she didn't drive her own car to certain neighborhoods at night. "Too risky," she explained. "My badge won't matter until after they've decided what I am." These weren't anecdotes. They were confessions. And Maya started collecting them. Not for the bureau. For the world. Because people still believed that wearing a badge made you immune. It didn't. It just made your fall harder to explain. At a national law enforcement symposium in Atlanta, Maya was invited to speak. She stood on a stage with 3 others, a police chief from Oakland, a civil rights attorney, and a former IC agent turned activist. The moderator asked, "What does it mean to wear the uniform and still fear those who wear it with you?" Maya let the silence stretch before answering. It means we've confused loyalty with complicity, she said. You can love your country and still call out its injustice. You can respect the badge and still fear the people who weaponize it. The room held its breath. Then someone clapped. Then more. Until it rolled like thunder. But applause, Maya knew, was not policy. Policy required pain. And she was prepared to push. Maya launched a national speaking tour, Unarmed Truths. She visited universities, police academies, community centers. Everywhere she went, she carried two things: her badge and the photo that saved her life. She held them up at every stop. "This saved me," she said of the image. "Not the law, not my training, not my compliance. Just this, reminding someone that I was more than what they assumed." And then she asked the room, "What happens to the people who don't have one of these?" The silence always answered for them. She received a letter one day. Handwritten. No return address. Inside was a single sentence. "You didn't just survive. You held the mirror." She kept it in the same drawer as the photo. Because in the end, truth wasn't armor. It was reflection. And she was determined to make people look longer. Harder. Without flinching. Maya stood in front of her closet, staring at the navy blue fabric hanging in plastic. Her dress uniform. Still crisp. Still polished. Still untouched since the day she wore it to the hearing. She had pulled it out twice since. Once, for a panel. Once, for a televised interview. But she hadn't worn it. Not because it didn't fit. Because it didn't feel like hers anymore. She remembered the first time she wore it. New agent. Proud. Eyes shining. Her mother had taken a photo outside the building. Maya had stood tall, chest out, the gold badge catching sunlight. That uniform had once made her feel safe. Now it felt like a costume. Like a disguise. Because she knew what it masked. It gave her access. Respect. Deference. But only when people saw it first. Take it off, and the assumptions returned. And that begged the question, was it respect? Or just reaction? She started showing up to events without it. To classrooms. To protests. To community summits. Just Maya. And what she discovered surprised her. People listened more. Not because of the badge. Because of her truth. She told her story plainly. They didn't stop a federal agent. They stopped a black woman. They didn't hear my credentials. They saw what they wanted to see. It resonated in rooms that uniforms never reached. It broke past the silence. At a community event in Baltimore, a woman approached her afterward. Elderly, gray curls, wrinkled hands trembling. She gripped Maya's hands and wouldn't let go. "My son didn't wear a uniform," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "He was just wearing a hoodie. They stopped him anyway. Said he reached. He didn't reach." Tears welled. "I'm glad you made it out. I just wish." She couldn't finish. Maya didn't let go. Didn't look away. "I wish he had too," Maya said. They stood there for minutes, in silence more sacred than any courtroom. Maya began pushing not just for reform, but for rethinking. Body cams weren't enough. Diversity training wasn't enough. Words like accountability were tossed around like slogans. She challenged departments. Who do your officers see when they stop someone like me? A citizen? Or a threat? And if it's the latter, how do you retrain a mind that's never been made to question itself? Some resisted. Some listened. A few, bravely, changed. One department rewrote their use of force guidelines after she spoke. Another created a civilian oversight panel, chaired by 3 mothers of victims. The change was slow, but it was real. Months passed. The uniform stayed in the closet. Still clean. Still pressed. But Maya no longer felt the need to wear it to be heard. It became a symbol of something she outgrew. Not pride. Not duty. But silence. Because for too long, that uniform had spoken for her. Had replaced her voice with institutional credibility. Now, she realized her voice was louder without it. And the truth didn't need to be stitched in gold to shine. At a high school seminar, a girl stood up during Q&A. 17. Told, "Nervous. What if we don't have a badge? What if all we have is fear?" Maya walked off the stage. Took the mic with her. stood beside the girl. Then we fight louder. Together. And we teach the next generation that truth doesn't come in uniform. It comes in numbers. In witnesses. In stories. In courage. The girl's eyes welled up. And for the first time, Maya saw herself not just as a survivor, but as a blueprint. It came in the form of a letter. Plain white envelope. No official seal. No return address. Just her name, typed neatly across the front. Inside, one page. A printed apology. It was from Officer Travis Colburn. Maya stared at it for several minutes before she even unfolded the paper. Something about the symmetry of it felt wrong. Too clean. Too easy. The letter opened with formal regret, quoted policy, acknowledged the incident. It ended with a short sentence. I hope one day you can forgive me. She read that line 3 times. Not because she was moved, but because she wasn't. She sat in silence, the letter in one hand, a cooling mug of tea in the other. The city buzzed outside her window, horns, sirens, the hum of life resuming. But something inside her remained still. Forgiveness, she knew, wasn't just a word you sent in the mail. It was a reckoning. And Colburn hadn't faced one. He hadn't come to the hearing with humility. He hadn't looked her in the eye that day. And now, months later, he sent a single-page letter like it could erase the moment her face hit the hood of her car. Like it could erase the silence from the officers who stood by. Like it could erase history. She didn't respond. Not because she couldn't. Because she wouldn't. Some things are not healed by acknowledgement. They are healed by accountability. She still hadn't seen a department-wide apology. Still hadn't seen new laws passed in her district. Still hadn't seen a national database for traffic stop misconduct. Words were air. And she was tired of breathing them without action. At a university panel on police reform, Maya sat alongside law enforcement leaders, legal scholars, and activists. A young officer on the panel tried to play devil's advocate. But what if Officer Colburn genuinely learned from this? What if he's changed? Doesn't he deserve the chance to prove that? Maya's face remained unreadable. Then she answered, "Change is not about the comfort of the one who caused harm. It's about the healing of the ones who lived through it." She looked at the officer. Her voice didn't rise. Ask yourself this. Would you be asking me to be gracious if I hadn't had a badge? If I hadn't survived? The voice wasn't loud. It was louder than loud. The room fell quiet. Because they all knew the answer. That night she wrote a letter too. Not to Colburn. To a mother in Louisiana whose son had been shot during a routine stop. The boy had no weapon. Just headphones in and a backpack on. Maya wrote, "I wish I could tell you that what happened to me prevented this. I wish I could say my badge made the world safer for all of us. But change isn't a moment. It's a movement. And I won't stop pushing until your son's name means something more than pain." She mailed it the next morning. No return address. Just a message. Weeks later, she spoke at a rally in Philadelphia. Rain poured over umbrellas. Protest signs bobbed like buoys in a restless sea. She stepped onto the stage, rain sliding down her face like salt. "I was told the system would protect me because I worked for it. But what saved me wasn't the badge. It was a photo. And if that scares you, it should." Cheers. Shouts. Fists in the air. She continued, "I will not clap for apologies that come too late. I will not bow to systems that only listen when one of their own bleeds." The crowd surged with her voice. Because too many of them were still waiting for letters. Letters that never came. She placed Colburn's letter in a drawer. Not with her important documents. With her reminders. Her list of names. Her stack of witness statements. Her printouts of policies never enforced. It stayed there. Not as a sign of forgiveness. But as proof. That words were easy. But truth had weight. And justice, if it meant anything, couldn't arrive by envelope. There was no parade. No headlines. No official announcement. But Maya Porter walked through her city differently now. Not because she felt safe. Because she felt certain. The road didn't belong to her. But the fight did. And that was enough. It came from a school principal in Southeast DC. A high school with metal detectors at the entrance and textbooks held together by tape. They asked Maya to speak at graduation. "We don't want a politician," the principal said. "We want someone real. Someone who's been through it and came out whole." Maya accepted. Not because she was whole, but because she wasn't. And that was the point. She stood at the podium in front of hundreds of students in caps and gowns, some with sneakers under their robes, some holding back tears. She looked out and saw what no photo could ever capture: potential that scared people in power. "Some of you," she said, "will be pulled over someday not because you did anything wrong, but because of how you look, how you exist." The crowd was silent. No phones. No coughs. Just breath. "I'm not here to tell you how to stay quiet or small. I'm here to tell you, you are not the threat. Your brilliance is. Your courage is. And the system only fears what it cannot control." She paused. "I wore a badge for years. It didn't protect me. But my voice did. And yours will too." By the end, the applause wasn't polite. It was powerful. A standing ovation from the future. That night, she drove through Route 9. The same road where everything changed. Same trees. Same curve. Same asphalt. Different Maya. No panic in her chest. No shallow breaths. Her hands were steady on the wheel. Halfway down the stretch, she slowed. Pulled over. Stepped out. She walked to the shoulder. Closed her eyes. The wind moved around her like it remembered her. And she whispered just loud enough, "You didn't break me." Then she got back in. And kept driving. Maya published a report 6 months later. Over 100 pages. Title: "The Invisible Stops. Truth Behind the Badge." It went viral. Not because it was flashy, but because it was real. Raw data. Personal accounts. Legislative gaps. A roadmap. It was downloaded 2.3 million times. Cited in hearings. Taught in classrooms. And read by people who had never heard her name before, but knew the story by heart. She never answered Colburn's letter, but she answered every email from students, every letter from grieving mothers, every call from community leaders asking what they could do next. That was the apology she needed. Not his. The system's. And most of all, the country's. Because true justice isn't something you receive. It's something you build. Brick by brick. Name by name. Voice by voice. If you've ever been silenced, profiled, or made to feel like your existence was a threat, this story is for you. If you've ever walked away from injustice and wondered if it was even worth speaking up, this is your sign. It is. Because systems don't shift by themselves. They shift when people like Maya refuse to stop walking. So now we ask you, what would you do if the system mistook your life for a threat? Share your thoughts in the comments. Start the conversation. Like this story if it moved you. Share it if you believe others need to hear it. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that speak truth, spark change, and stand up to power. Because the road ahead still needs paving. And your voice might be the stone that makes it solid.